Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, I invite you to step into a quiet place within yourself, a place beyond the noise of the day, beyond the questions that circle through your mind. Take a slow breath in, feeling the cool air fill your chest. Exhale gently and imagine the weight of this day slipping from your shoulders. You do not need to do anything now. You do not need to solve, achieve, or explain. This is a time simply to be. Tonight, I will share with you a story about the burdens we carry not in our hands, but in our thoughts, and how sometimes the heaviest load is the one we refuse to put down. Long ago, in a quiet corner of Japan, there were two monks, one older, seasoned by many years of practice, and one much younger, eager to learn the path of Zen. They lived in a small temple at the edge of a mountain forest. Every morning, they would rise before dawn to meditate, sweep the grounds, and tend to the garden. Their lives were simple and disciplined, their days marked by the slow rhythms of nature. One morning, after a night of heavy rain, the abbot asked them to deliver a parcel to a neighboring monastery. The sky was bright again, but the road was thick with mud, the earth still saturated from the storm. The older monk tied the bundle securely in a cloth and tucked it beneath his robe. He glanced at his young companion, who stood quietly, hands folded in anticipation. Together, they bowed to their abbot, then set off down the path. They walked in silence, as was their habit, listening to the wind sigh through the pines, the distant call of a cuckoo hidden among the branches. The air smelled of wet leaves and rich, dark soil. Now and then, the younger monk stole a look at his teacher, wondering what thoughts passed behind those calm eyes. After several hours, they reached a narrow road that curved along the edge of a swollen river. The path here was the worst they had seen, a long stretch of deep, sticky mud, slick as oil. Standing at the edge was a young woman in an elegant silk kimono, bright as autumn leaves. She looked down at her wooden sandals, already smeared with mud, and let out a helpless sigh. When she lifted her face, the monks could see her distressed eyes wide with worry, mouth pressed into a thin line. She glanced up at the older monk as he approached, her voice small and trembling. "Honorable sir," she said, bowing her head, "may I trouble you? I cannot cross without ruining my clothing." The younger monk felt heat rise to his cheeks. They were monks vowed to avoid contact with women. He waited, certain his teacher would walk past in silence. But the older monk paused. He studied the young woman with clear, steady eyes. Then, without a word, he bent his knees, lifted her into his arms, as if she weighed nothing, and carried her across the muddy road. Her hands clutched the sleeves of his robe. The hem of her kimono fluttered in the breeze. And then, just as quickly, he set her down on the dry path beyond. She bowed deeply, her voice full of relief. "Thank you, kind sir," she said. The older monk nodded once, then turned and continued on his way. For several moments, the younger monk could not move. His thoughts raced in tight, tangled circles. How could his teacher have done such a thing? How could he have touched a woman, held her so close? He hurried to catch up, his sandals squelching in the mud. They walked on in silence, the river murmuring beside them. The younger monk kept his gaze fixed on the ground, his heart pounding. Hours passed. The sun climbed high, warming their shoulders. They delivered the parcel at the neighboring temple, bowed to the abbot there, and began the journey home. Still, the younger monk said nothing. But inside, a storm was building indignation, confusion, a small voice whispering that the older monk had betrayed their vows. For a long time, they walked without speaking. But inside the younger monk, thoughts crowded against one another like birds trapped in a narrow cage. At first, it was only a dull irritation like a stone in his sandal he could not shake free. Why did he do that? He thought. Why would a respected master lower himself to touch her? He tried to tell himself it was compassion, that a simple act of kindness did not matter. But the more he thought, the tighter his chest became. A voice inside hissed that this was a failure, a stain upon their vows. He replayed the moment over, and over the hem of her bright kimono, brushing against the old monk's sleeve, the way her arms circled his shoulders as he carried her. He felt heat rise in his face, a sour taste in his mouth. And beneath the anger lay something harder to admit: envy. Envy that his teacher could be so free, so unconcerned by rules and judgment. Envy that the old monk's mind seemed untroubled while his own seethed with confusion. He tried to push the feeling away, to bury it beneath the weight of doctrine. But it returned, sharper each time. Doesn't he care what people will think? Doesn't he care what I think? He wanted to ask, to demand an explanation, but he was afraid of what the answer would reveal about himself. So he clenched his jaw and walked on, every step heavy with unspoken resentment. And still, the older monk said nothing. He moved like a mountain unmoving, unbothered by the storm just behind him. The silence grew thick as twilight settled over the road, until at last the young monk felt he would choke if he did not speak. And with a voice ragged and uncertain, he called out to his teacher. "Master," he began, "as monks we must avoid even the touch of women. Yet you carried that woman across the road. How could you do such a thing?" The older monk turned slowly. For a moment he simply looked at his student, his face as calm as the river at twilight. Then he smiled a small, quiet smile that held no regret. "I set her down on the other side of the road," he said. "Why are you still carrying her?" The words fell into the evening air, like a stone dropped into deep water. The younger monk felt his breath catch. His thoughts stuttered and fell silent. At that moment he understood. All the way back, it had not been the act that burdened him. It was his own clinging mind. He had carried her not in his arms, but in his thoughts. And it was his refusal to set the moment down that weighed on him so heavily. He lowered his eyes, his anger dissolving into something softer. A quiet he had never known before settled over his heart. They continued home without another word. Perhaps, dear listener, you too have carried something long after the moment has passed. A hurtful comment, a disappointment, an image of yourself that no longer fits. We believe that by replaying the past, we can somehow make sense of it, or protect ourselves from being hurt again. But all we do is carry a weight that was never meant to be held so long. How many times have you replayed a single conversation, over and over, as if your mind could change what has already happened? How often have you burdened yourself with judgments that were never yours to keep? Tonight, I invite you to imagine all the things you still carry. Close your eyes, if you like, and picture them, each memory, each old resentment, each regret like stones in a heavy sack slung over your shoulder. Feel the weight of it. Notice how it has pulled you down, how it has shaped your steps. And now, imagine setting the sack down beside the road. Feel how your body lightens, how your breath comes easier, how your heart feels more spacious. There is no need to carry what is already over. You are allowed to put it down. Perhaps tonight, you can let this story remind you. What you carry in your mind can weigh more than anything you hold in your hands. You can set it down. You can rest. Take a slow breath in. Feel the cool air fill the spaces that used to be crowded with old burdens. Exhale gently and let it all slip away. If you like, picture the two monks walking home through the soft dusk, one no longer troubled by what had passed, the other learning at last how to let go. The path ahead is quiet now. Nothing to carry but the simple presence of this moment. No past to replay, no future to fear, only now. Breathe in the peace of this understanding. Breathe out any last traces of tension. When thoughts arise, they will meet them with the same quiet smile the old monk offered. A smile that says, "I have already set this down. I am free to walk on. Stay here as long as you wish, resting in this soft, unhurried space. May your sleep tonight be deep and unburdened. May your dreams be clear and kind. And when you wake, may you remember, you do not have to carry what has already passed. You are free. Good night.